The envelope hit the doormat like a gunshot, the kind that echoes through a quiet Brooklyn brownstone and shatters the fragile piece you'd built from broken glass. I tore it open with hands that hadn't stopped shaking since the night he left, and there they were, 50 train tickets, one for every state, each stamped with destinations that whispered our unfinished dreams. New York to California, Texas to Maine, a spiderweb of rails across the heart of America. At the bottom, scrawled in his familiar, looping script, "I never stopped loving you, Liam. Ride them for me. Find what we lost." My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor, the tickets scattering like fallen leaves in a storm. Mason's voice, God, that voice, gravelly from too many late-night smokes and laughter that could light up a blackout, haunted me. If I ever leave, it'll be because I love you too much to stay. He'd lied. Or maybe he hadn't. Either way, the pain clawed up my throat, raw and unrelenting, as I realized this wasn't an apology. It was a map. A goddamn scavenger hunt for a love we'd buried under betrayal and bad decisions. I met Mason in the summer of 22, at a dive bar in Williamsburg where the air smelled like spilled IPA and regret. I was 25, fresh out of a dead-end graphic design gig in Queens, nursing a whiskey sour and sketching strangers on a napkin to feel less invisible. He slid onto the stool next to me, all broad shoulders and easy grin, his flannel shirt rolled up to show forearms dusted with sawdust from whatever carpentry job kept him afloat. "That's me. Huh?" he'd said, nodding at my doodle, a rough outline of a guy with a jawline that could cut glass. I flushed, stammered something about artistic license, and he laughed, that deep rumble that made my stomach flip. "Liam, right? Saw your name on the tab. A Mason. Buy you another." We talked until last call, about everything and nothing. His nomadic childhood bouncing between his dad's Montana ranch and his mom's Boston brownstones, my Irish immigrant folks who dragged me from Dublin to Detroit before settling in the Apple like it was some promised land. He was 30, a freelance builder with a truck full of tools and a heart full of wanderlust, dreaming of restoring old barns into heirlooms along Route 66. I confessed my secret sketches of queer icons, Harvey Milk in faded denim, James Baldwin mid-sentence, hidden in a drawer because coming out in my conservative family still felt like jumping without a net. "Screw the net," he said, his hand brushing mine under the bar. "Jump with me." That night, we stumbled back to my walk-up, lips crashing in the stairwell, hands fumbling with buttons and belts like we were starving. His body was solid, unyielding, the kind that made you feel anchored in a world that spun too fast. We made love on my lumpy futon, slow at first, exploratory. His fingers tracing the freckles across my chest like constellations, my mouth mapping the scar on his hip from a bar fight he wouldn't talk about. "You're beautiful," he whispered against my neck, and for the first time, I believed it. Not the pretty boy version my exes chased, but the real me, scarred knees from skateboarding fails, a laugh that snorted when I was tipsy, a heart too soft for New York winters. By fall, we were inseparable. Weekends in the Catskills, where he'd chop wood for bonfires and I'd read him poetry by the fire, Walt Whitman, because Mason swore the old man's lines felt like America itself, wild and untamed. He'd listen, head in my lap, fingers idly stroking my thigh, and murmur, "That's us, Liam." Leaves of grass, root-bound and reaching, we talked marriage, not the white dress kind, but a quiet ceremony in Vermont, rings from a street vendor in the village. Adoption, maybe, or fostering kids who needed to know love didn't come with asterisks. We'll build a life, he'd say, pulling me close. Brick by brick, state by state. But cracks formed early, hairline fractures I ignored because his touch mended them every time. Mason's jobs took him away. 2 weeks in Philly framing a brownstone. A month in Nashville rehabbing a honky-tonk. I'd wait with takeout Thai and bad rom-coms, but the calls grew shorter, excuses longer. Clients breathing down my neck, he'd say, voice tinny over spotty signal. I filled the silence with my own grind, landing a junior role at a Soho ad agency, doodling logos that paid the rent but starved the soul. Still, when he came home, it was fireworks, dinners at Veselka, walks along the High Line where he'd steal kisses under the billboards, promising forever. The betrayal hit like a nor'easter, unannounced and brutal. It was December, snow blanketing the city in that deceptive hush, and I surprised him early from a Chicago client pitch. His truck was in the alley behind my building, which meant he'd wrapped up in Jersey sooner than planned. I bounded up the stairs, arms full of poinsettias and his favorite bourbon, key turning in the lock like always. The door swung open to moans, low and rhythmic, and there he was, Mason, barebacked on our bed, tangled with some guy from the crew, a tattooed roughneck with a beard like Bronson, hands gripping Mason's hips as if they owned them. Time fractured. I dropped the flowers, petals scattering like blood on the hardwood. Liam, Mason gasped, scrambling for sheets, but the other guy just smirked, unashamed, pulling on jeans like this was Tuesday. Get out, I choked, voice a stranger's, pointing at the door. The roughneck shrugged, zipped up, and vanished down the stairs. Mason reached for me, eyes wide with that puppy dog plea I'd fallen for, but I recoiled. How long? I demanded, chest heaving. He stammered, once, twice, a weekend in Atlanta when the loneliness hit too hard. It meant nothing, he begged. You're everything, but lies have weight, and this one crushed me. I threw his duffel at him, tools clattering, clothes spilling, and screamed what I'd bottled for months. You promised state by state. Mason, not screwing your way across them. He left that night, tail lights fading into the slush, and I curled on the floor amid the wilted blooms, sobbing until dawn cracked the sky gray. Months blurred into a numb routine, agency deadlines blurring my vision, nights at the bar sketching ghosts. Friends, our friends, now just mine, urged therapy, grinder, anything to fill the void. But Mason lingered like smoke, a flannel in the closet, a half-read copy of On the Road dog-eared on the nightstand. I burned the photos, deleted the texts, but the ache rooted deeper, a thorn in the heart. Then the envelope arrived, 3 months to the day since he'd walked out. 50 tickets, a love letter disguised as wanderlust. I stared at them for hours, fingers tracing the routes we'd mapped on napkins, Amtrak from Penn Station to the Grand Canyon, Greyhound detours through the Smokies. Ride them for me, he'd written. Find what we lost. Arrogant bastard. As if a cross-country jaunt could stitch up the gash he'd carved. But as the city hummed outside my window, sirens wailing like lost souls, something stirred. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a spark. Defiance, maybe. Or curiosity. What if I did it? What if I chased the ghost of us across America, state by state, and discovered if love could outrun betrayal? I packed light, a backpack with sketchpad, jeans, tees, and the tickets like talismans. Called in a sabbatical, personal pilgrimage, I told my boss, who nodded sympathetically, assuming grief for a dead relative. The first train left at dawn, New York to Pennsylvania, a short hop to test the waters. As the rails clicked beneath me, Hudson River blurring past, I unfolded the note again. I never stopped. Bullshit. But damn if it didn't pull me forward, into the unknown. Pennsylvania welcomed me with rain-slicked rails and a depot in Philly that smelled of cheesesteaks and history. I checked into a hostel near Rittenhouse Square, the kind with bunk beds and backpackers trading stories over lukewarm coffee. My ticket was for a day trip to Lancaster, Amish country. Mason's pick, he'd said once, because nothing heals like simplicity. Irony bit hard. Simplicity was the last thing I craved. But I boarded the bus anyway, the envelope's weight in my pocket a dare. The countryside unfolded in quilts of green and gold, buggies clopping alongside highways like echoes from another era. I wandered the markets, sketching quilt patterns that reminded me of Mason's tattoos, interlocking geometrics inked during a bender in New Orleans. An old woman sold me shoofly pie, her eyes crinkling as she asked if I was lost. "Aren't we all?" I replied, and she laughed, pressing an extra slice into my hand. That night, in a B&B with creaky floors, I dreamed of him, us in a quilt fort during a blackout, whispering secrets until the power flickered back. Woke with salt on my lips, the pie untouched on the nightstand. Next stop, Ohio, Cleveland's Rust Belt grit a mirror to my own frayed edges. The train rattled through the night, lulling me into fitful sleep where Mason's face morphed from lover to liar. I arrived hollow-eyed, crashing at a motel off Lake Erie, the kind with neon signs buzzing vacancy, like a siren's call. Walked the shore at dusk, wind-whipping waves that crashed like accusations. "Why him?" I muttered to the gulls. "Why now?" A jogger paused, asked if I was okay, broad build, kind eyes, but I waved him off. Not ready for distractions. Not when every pebble underfoot felt like the fragments of us. In a dive bar that night, nursing a pierogi platter and a pint, I overheard locals griping about mill closures, love's lost to the grind. One guy, mid-40s with a faded Steelers tat, clapped my shoulder. "Heartbreak's the great leveler, kid. Builds character or breaks you." I sketched him surreptitiously, lines etched like fault lines, and wondered if Mason had found his character in someone else's bed. Back in my room, I pulled out the tickets, plotting the path. Indiana next, then Illinois, a zigzag toward the heartland. Each punch a step away from Brooklyn, toward whatever phantom waited at the end. Indiana was flat as a promise. Bloomington's college town vibe a balm for my urban-weary soul. Hoosier National Forest ticket took me deep into trails where leaves crunched underfoot like brittle bones. I hiked alone, sketchpad forgotten in my pack, letting the silence unpack the baggage. Memories ambushed me. Mason teaching me to swing an axe in the Adirondacks, his laugh when I nicked my thumb. "Clumsy artist," he teased, kissing the Band-Aid. Betrayal twisted it sour. Had he swung that axe at our foundation? Sat by a creek that afternoon, skipping stones, each plunk a fuck you to the pain. A family picnicked nearby, two dads with a toddler in pigtails, their easy affection a punch to the gut. They waved. I waved back, throat tight. Human connection, raw and unfiltered. Maybe that's what Mason meant. Not just ride, but feel. Illinois hit like a fever dream. Chicago's loop a whirlwind of steel and sky. My ticket was for the L train loop, but I detoured to the Art Institute, wandering galleries until a Hopper painting stopped me cold. Nighthawks, that eternal diner isolation. I sat on the bench, tears blurring the glass, remembering our first gallery date. Mason's hand in mine, whispering, "See, we're the figures in the window, lit up against the dark." Now, I was the lone patron, shadows lengthening. Bought a postcard of it. Scribbled "Missed you today." To who? Him? Myself? And mailed it to nowhere. The Windy City nights were alive with possibility. Boys' town bars pulsing with drag queens and disco, where I danced with strangers whose touches were fire without the burn. One, a barista named Theo with curls like mine, bought me around and asked my story. I spilled half the tickets, the X, the quest. "Sounds romantic," he said, lips brushing my ear. We tumbled to his place, bodies urgent but minds distant. His kisses were sweet, but Mason's ghost lingered in the hollows. Dawn found me slipping out, leaving a note, "Thanks for the night." Still riding. Guilt gnawed, not for Theo, but for chasing echoes when maybe I needed silence. Pushing west. Iowa's cornfields stretched infinite, a green sea that swallowed secrets. Des Moines Depot dropped me at a farmstay, where the host, a silver-haired widow named Clara, served biscuits and black coffee. "Traveling solo?" she asked, eyeing my pack. I nodded, and she shared tales of her late husband, a railroader who'd mapped their life by mile markers. "Love's a journey, not a destination," she said, patting my hand. Her words stuck as I biked through fields, wind in my hair, the tickets fluttering like flags of truce. Sketched a crow on a fence post, titled it Messenger, and wondered if Mason watched from afar, regretting the miles between. Missouri blurred the lines. St. Louis's gateway arch a gleaming question mark against the sky. Climbed it at sunset, city sprawling below like a lover's limbs. Up there, vertigo hit, not from height but memory. Mason promising to build us a treehouse taller than this damn thing. Laughed bitterly, tears freezing in the chill. Down below, a street fiddler played Shenandoah, the melody weaving through my ribs. Tipped him double, whispered, "For lost loves." That night, in a jazz club thick with smoke and sax, I let a stranger buy me absinthe, his hand on my knee a spark I almost fanned. But pulled back. Not yet, I thought. Not until Kansas. The sunflower state was golden, Wichita's plains a canvas of endless blue. Ticket to the Flint Hills, where prairie grass whispered ancient songs. Camped under stars that felt close enough to touch. Fire crackling as I roasted marshmallows and roasted memories. The betrayal replayed in embers, his moans, that smirk. But layered now with tenderness, the way he'd hum me to sleep after nightmares, brew tea just how I liked. Pulled out my phone. First time in weeks. No calls, but a text from an unknown number. "Hope the rides are healing." M deleted it. Or tried to. The ghost stayed. Kansas bled into Nebraska without fanfare. Omaha's stockyards a gritty reminder of America's underbelly. I hitched a local train to the Platte River, where sandhill cranes migrated in clouds that darkened the dawn. Watched them from a riverside inn, their calls a chorus of persistence, flying thousands of miles for a season's love. Felt seen, somehow. The innkeeper, a burly vet named Hank with a rainbow flag in his window, poured me bourbon neat. "Seen your type before," he said gruffly. "Running from or to?" I shrugged. He nodded. "Either way, it counts." We talked vets and visibility, his service in Nam, my quiet fears of family rejection. "Pride ain't just parades," he grunted. It's showing up, scars and all. Left with a patched jacket and a lighter heart. The tickets now companions, not chains. South Dakota's Badlands erupted like a fever scar on the earth. Layered rock screaming silent stories. Ticket dropped me at Wall Drug, that kitsch mecca of free ice water and 5-cent coffee. But I pressed on to the park, hiking trails where wind carved canyons deeper than grudges. Sat at a overlook, sketching the strata, each band a layer of us. The wild topsoil of early days, the shale of secrets buried. A ranger, young and freckled like me, shared lunch, jerky and tales of queer outposts in the plains. You're brave. Coming alone, he said, eyes lingering. Brushed it off with a joke, but his number burned in my pocket. Temptation, testing the waters I damned. The Black Hills called next. Mount Rushmore looming like judgmental gods. Washington, Jefferson, those flawed fathers. Stood before Lincoln's gaze, whispering confessions. He broke me, but I'm mending. Tears came unbidden, tourists milling oblivious. That night in Rapid City, a queer open mic sucked me in, poets spilling guts under dim lights. I signed up on impulse. Read a raw piece about tickets and traders, voice cracking on the chorus. State by state, I chase your shadow, but it's me I'm finding. Applause thundered. A hug from the host. A woman with a buzz cut and biceps grounded me. Healing's messy, she said. Keep writing it out. Wyoming's winds howled freedom. Cheyenne's rodeo grounds pulsing with boot stomps and beer. My ticket was for a ranch stay, where I saddled up with cowboys who didn't blink at my city boy softness. One, Jake, a lanky bronc rider with a drawl that dripped honey, taught me roping, his hands steady on mine. Love's like ridin', he drawled over campfire beans. Gotta hold loose, or it bucks you off. We shared a tent that night, not crossing lines but close enough to feel the heat. His stories of lost buddies, of AIDS wards in the 80s, of coming out in bunkhouses wove humanity into the stars. Dawn. I left before he woke. A note. Thanks for the loose hold. Mason's shadow flickered. Jealous now? Good. Montana swallowed me whole. Big sky country a balm for bruised souls. Mason's home turf. His dad's ranch near Bozeman, though I steered clear. Train to Glacier National Park, where going to the Sun Road twisted like veins. Hiked to Hidden Lake, water so clear it mirrored regrets. Slipped on moss, twisted an ankle, nothing broken, but the pain sharpened focus. Limped back to a lodge, where a doc patched me up, silver fox named Elias, with hands gentle as confession. Over tea, he pried gently, my quest, the X. Betrayal's a thief, he said, eyes knowing. Steals trust, but not capacity. We walked the veranda at dusk, his arm a crutch, conversation flowing like the streams below. Almost kissed him under the pines, but pulled back. Not closure yet. Idaho's panhandle was hushed, Coeur d'Alene's lake a sapphire promise. Ticket for a float down the Spokane River, inner tube bobbing with locals splashing and laughing. Joined a group queer rafting club, rainbows on paddles where I came out mid-rapids, whooping as we spun. Beers shoreside, stories swapped, bad dates, better loves. One guy, tattooed sailor named Rio, shared his Mason, a Navy betrayal that beached him. Forgave? Not. Forgot? Slowly. His resilience fueled me. Sketched the group at twilight, titled River Runneth Deep. Washington's evergreens dripped melancholy. Seattle's space needle-piercing clouds like doubt. Ferry to the islands. Ticket stub wet from mist. Orcas leaped in the sound. Free and fleeting. Wandered Friday Harbor. Bookstore cat curling in my lap as I pored over Kerouac. On the road. Mason's Bible. Underlined. The only people for me are the mad ones. Was I mad? Chasing a love that bucked me off? A clerk. Pierced and poetic. Recommended a beach read. Our chat turned flirty, but I demurred. Patience. Liam. Nights in a cabin. Rain pattering like fingers on skin. I texted friends back east. Halfway. Hearts heavier. Lighter. Truth in both. Oregon's coast crashed wild. Portland's food carts a symphony of spice. Train to Cannon Beach. Haystack Rock sentinel against the tide. Storm watched from a driftwood fort. Waves pounding like pulse. Sketched the sea stacks. Each a monument to endurance. Met a surfer dude. Kai bronzed and breezy who towed me out on his board. Salt-stung kisses in the curl. But it fizzled on shore, fun. Not fire. You're questing, he said, grinning. Find your wave. Laughed. The sound foreign but welcome. Betrayal's sting dulled here. Lapped by Pacific rhythm. California beckoned like a siren. But first Nevada's neon void. Reno's casinos blinked false promises. Ticket for a quick casino crawl. Gambled quarters on slots. Won $20, enough for a steak at a greasy spoon. Bartender, a rye queen named Dell, clocked me instantly. Honey, you scream Heartbreak Highway, spilled over Manhattans. She nodded, sharing her own Mason, a showgirl scandal in the 70s. Love's a gamble. Know when to fold. Walked the strip at midnight, lights blurring tears. Folding? No. Doubling down. The Golden State exploded in excess. Sacramento's farms giving way to Yosemite's granite cathedrals. Ticket to the valley, where El Capitan loomed like Mason's silhouette. Climbed a trail to Mist Falls, mist veiling my sobs. Sat with hikers, a queer couple renewing vows. Their hands clasped a vow I once craved. Joined their picnic, toasting to second chances. What's yours? They asked. Hesitated. Then, forgiveness. Maybe, echoed in the canyon. Prayer or plea. Utah's red rocks burned redemption. Salt Lake City's Mormon spires a stark contrast to my wandering faith. Train to arches, where delicate arch balanced on the brink, poised, unbroken. Hiked at dawn, sun igniting stone like inner fire. At the crest, wind-whipped and weeping, I yelled into the void. Mason, you bastard, I hate you, I love you. Echoes faded, leaving quiet. A fellow trekker, a soft-spoken engineer named Theo, another one, Universe's joke, offered water. We descended together, his steady pace mirroring his questions, gentle probes into my scars. Shared a meal in Moab, under stars that pinned the sky. His touch was tentative, electric. We made love in his camper, slow and sacred, bodies learning new languages. No ghosts that night. Woke tangled, whispered thank you, and parted with a promise. Find me when you're whole. Wholeness felt closer, a horizon line. Arizona's deserts whispered survival. Grand Canyon's rim a gash in the soul. Ticket for the South Rim shuttle, but I hiked down Bright Angel. Mule trains trumpeting warnings. Layers of rock told eons. Mine, mere months. At the river's edge, Colorado churning turquoise fury, I scattered petals from a wildflower bouquet, remnants of our last picnic. For the us that was, I murmured. Ascent was agony, lungs burning, but summit brought euphoria. Alive, unbroken. Campfire circle that eve. Rangers spinning yarns of queer pioneers. Cowboys loving in the shadows. Joined their song circle. Voice hoarse but true. This land is your land. This land is my land. Mason's map. Now mine. New Mexico's adobe warmth enveloped. Santa Fe's galleries a feast for starved eyes. Ticket to Taos Pueblo. Ancient homes rising like prayers. Wandered with artisans. Buying a silver cuff etched with thunderbirds, protection, they said. Sketched adobe curves. Lines flowing freer. Met a sculptor, Diego, fiery and philosophical, who invited me to his studio. Clay on hands. We molded forms. Abstract hearts. Cracked but mended with gold. Kintsugi, he explained. Beauty in breaks. Our night was passion-painted bodies as canvas. Moans echoing off walls. But dawn brought clarity. Gratitude, not greed. Left with a shard of his work. A talisman for the mend. Texas sprawled vast and visceral. Austin's live music a heartbeat thrum. Train to the hill country. Vineyards rolling like green waves. Ticket for a wine tour, but I detoured to a queer barn dance. Fiddles wailing, boots stomping. Two-stepped with a cowboy poet. His verses velvet over vice. Loves lost in longhorns, found in firelight. We tumbled to hayloft whispers, his drawl drawing out desires long dormant. Climax came fierce, release a roar against the rafters. After, under quilted stars, he asked my tale. Told it truncated. He nodded. Ride on, darlin'. Texas is big enough for grudges, but forgiveness fits better. Echoed as I boarded eastbound, body sated, spirit stirring. Oklahoma's plains pulsed with oil rigs nodding like penitents. Tulsa's depot led to the Route 66 Museum. Neon ghosts of road trips past. Walked the Mother Road stretch. Thumb out for a lift. Picked up by a trucker named Earl. Grizzled and gay. Who'd lost his partner to cancer. He left me mixtapes, Earl shared over diner pie. Silly songs, but they saved me. My tickets mirrored that silly? No, sacred. Dropped in Amarillo, Cadillac Ranch spray-painted in graffiti prayers. Added my own, Mason plus Liam equals? Heart-pounding. Erased it. Liam equals enough. Arkansas's Ozarks folded secrets in hollers. Little Rock's riverfront a lazy loop. Ticket for hot springs. Thermal baths steaming like unspoken words. Soaked in mineral waters. Heat leaching ache from bones. Beside me, a retiree couple, silver queens holding hands, shared their story. 50 years, through Stonewall to now. We fought, the taller one said. Betrayals, big and small. But chose each other daily. Tears mixed with the bath. Their hug, a benediction. Emerged renewed, skin pink as promise. Louisiana's bayous breathed sultry soul. New Orleans a carnival of chaos and grace. Train to the quarter, where jazz spilled from doorways like bourbon. Ticket for a swamp tour, gators gliding silent as sins. Guide, a Creole king named Remy, spun tales of voodoo loves, binding spells and broken hearts. Love's magic, share, but free will's the curse. Bourbon Street that night, Mardi Gras beads raining. I danced in a sea of sequins, a twink's lips on mine fleeting as confetti. But in a courtyard cafe, saxophone weeping summertime, the dam broke, sobbed into absinthe, Strangers' arms a chorus of comfort. Human, I thought. We're all just human. Mississippi's Delta wailed blues, Clarksdale's crossroads a mythic pull. Ticket to the Delta Blues Museum, artifacts humming heartache. Sat with a guitar, plucking strings that bled emotion, wrote a verse, tickets in my fist to your door. Buskied on the corner, tips in a hat. A crowd gathered, nodding to the rhythm of ruin and rise. An old bluesman, fingers gnarled as roots, joined in, boy, that's truth. Sing it till it sets you free. Harmonica wail chased me north, lighter. Alabama's Gulf shimmered salt and sun. Mobile's bayous a briny hug. Train to the beaches, where dunes whispered forgive. Ticket for a catamaran sail, wind filling sails like lungs. Skipper, a sun-kissed dyke named Sal, taut knots, life's tangles, untie slow. Dolphin pod arced alongside, joyful arcs. Anchored at dusk, we shared shrimp boils and stories, hers of church burnings and chosen family. Queer in the South, it's fire walkin', her resilience kindled mine. Sketched the pod, titled Leaps of Faith. Florida's Keys chained turquoise temptations, Miami's pulse electric. But first Georgia, Atlanta's skyline sharp as regret. Ticket for the Beltline, urban trail weaving history. Jogged it at twilight, murals of civil rights heroes urging onward. Stopped at a fountain, tossed a penny, clarity. Met a group of activists, queer POC poets, slam night raw and real. Read my Delta verse. They cheered, one pulling me into a huddle. Your story's ours. Keep crossing lines. Southbound then, Savannah's oaks dripping Spanish moss like veils. The Peach State clung humid, but release beckoned. South Carolina's lowcountry steamed with ghosts. Charleston's plantations a poignant paradox. Beauty built on bondage. Train to the Battery, where cannons faced forgotten wars. Wandered rainbow row houses, sketching pastel facades cracked by time. A gallery owner, Theo No, again, invited me to a queer art walk. Paintings pulsed passion, lovers entwined, betrayals abstracted in bold strokes. Bought a print, two figures bridging a chasm, and hung it in my mind's gallery. That night, under palmetto shade, fireflies danced like fireflies of hope. Almost there, I thought. Eastward, homeward. North Carolina's Appalachians rose rugged. Asheville's artsy vibe a queer haven. Ticket for the Blue Ridge Parkway, vistas unfolding like scrolls. Drove a rental rules be damned, twisting roads that mirrored my twists. Stopped at craggy gardens, rhododendrons rioting pink. Hiked to a pinnacle, wind singing psalms. There, cell buzzed, unknown number. Made it to the end? Call me. Heart hammered. Ignored it, but the pull tightened. Virginia's Shenandoah whispered autumn fire, leaves aflame. Train to Front Royal, then trail to Old Rag scramble steep as emotions. Slipped once, caught by a climber named Alex, wiry, wise, with a harness of hard-won peace. Life's a belay, he panted, securing me. Camped that night, stars pricking the ink black, sharing esmores and scars. His betrayal, a partner's addiction-fueled infidelity. Chose me over us, he said. Hardest love. Dawn belay down. I left stronger, number exchanged but uncalled. West Virginia's hollers hid coal-black pain, but Harper's Ferry's confluence glowed. Ticket for the historic towpath. Canal boat gliding lazy. Captain spun yarns of abolitionists, queer allies in the fight. Love's revolution, he boomed. Echoed as I canoed the Potomac, waters merging like fates. Picked up a hitchhiker, a runaway teen, eyes wide with fear. Dropped him at a shelter, his thanks a thread in the tapestry. Maryland's Chesapeake bayed salty secrets, Baltimore's inner harbor a gritty gem. Train to the aquarium, jellyfish pulsing ethereal. Watched them drift, thought of Mason's eyes, storm gray, drifting away. Wandered Fells Point, crab cakes and craft brews with dockworkers who joked about harbor hugs. One, a burly bear named Gus, bought a round, his bear hug literal, lifting spirits. World's rough, kid. Hug back, laugh true, the sound a key turning. Delaware's beaches breathed easy, Rehoboth a gay mecca. Ticket for the boardwalk, dunes soft underfoot. Festival vibe, pride flags whipping, drag brunches bubbling. Danced on sand to beach beats, a surfer's arms around me transient thrill. But sunset solo, waves lapping litanies, what now? Liam? The answer, one state left. Home. New Jersey's Pine Barrens spooked with legends, but the train hummed familiar. Philly layover, cheesesteak homage, then final pull to New York. Penn Station loomed, the envelope empty now, ticket stubs in my pack like shed skin. Exited to the crush, but instead of home, hailed a cab to the one place, his last known build site, a brownstone rehab in Cobble Hill. Heart thundering, I approached, scaffoldings down, fresh paint gleaming. Doorbell buzzed, a worker answered. Mason, he nodded, eyes wary, then lit. Liam pulled me inside, amid sawdust and solitude. The place was ours, skylights we dreamed, kitchen island for midnight snacks. Sold the crew on it, he said, voice rough. Kept the blueprints for us. Words tumbled. My rides, the men, the mending. His confession, the cheat, a panic spiral, job loss, identity quake, fearing he'd drag me down. Ran because I loved you too fierce, he choked. Tickets were my crawl back, tears mingled, bodies colliding in forgiveness's fury. Love reclaimed, raw and real. Not perfect, scars lingered. But in that half-built home, we laid bricks anew. Therapy Tuesdays, road trip vows, a future sketched together. Months later, rings exchanged in Vermont, simple bands, witnessed by friends who'd waited. We foster now, a boy with freckles like mine, teaching him jumps without nets. America stretched beyond windows, states no longer divides but threads. Mason's note, framed, I never stopped. Truth. And neither did I. In the quiet, as snow dusts Brooklyn, he pulls me close. State by state, I tease. He grins. That rumble. Forever.